And for us, it was social change. Our provincial government developed a new program for seniors and publicly announced that it was as a result of my study and the opportunity to talk to the women themselves.
So welcome to Aging Vibrantly, Conversations to Empower Seniors, an Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario podcast. I'm Rayanne Rideout, host of the show, where we amplify the voices of seniors who impart their expertise and wisdom to enhance our understanding of aging issues and ways of living a safe and fulfilling life with respect and dignity. Today, I am joined with my co-host, Sherry Baker, a member of our podcast Senior Advisory Committee and previous executor of the British Columbia Association of the Community Response Network, which she was the executive director from 2010 to 2024, and is now an independent consultant providing one-to-one support to leaders in organizations. Sherry, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you are as excited as I am for today's interview on lifelong learning. We have the privilege to speak with Dr. Olive Bryanton, who's been a lifelong colleague of both of ours in the work of aging issues. So we are so excited to have you and Dr. Bryanton to join us today. On our episode on Aging Vibrantly, we're going to talk about later life learning. And before we begin, I want to tell our listeners a little bit about Olive, as she is truly an aging inspiration and role model for all of us. So Olive is an educator and a passionate advocate for older adults. As a lifelong learner, Olive received her bachelor's degree in sociology in 1984, a master's degree in education in 2009, and in 2019, at the age of 81, she defended her PhD in philosophy and education, all from the University of Prince Edward Island. She's also received an honorary degree from the University of Prince Edward Island for her advocacy work with older adults and lifelong learning. Just to give you a sense of her advocacy work, she has been instrumental in the establishment of the University of Prince Edward Island's Mature and Part-Time Studies Student Association, the Seniors Active Living Center, the Seniors College of Prince Edward Island, and the Senior Safety Program. She's been awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee for her contributions to seniors provincially and federally, and was appointed by PEI's Minister of Health to serve as an executive advisor for the development of seniors' health and wellness strategy. So Olive, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to learn and be inspired by you, and I'm sure you are going to inspire so many other people in our discussion today on later life learning. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Sherry, to start our conversation off today.
Thank you, Rayanne, and it's just wonderful to be here with Olive, we've developed a wonderful friendship over the years as we sort of are roughly the same age, and it's been really wonderful to have a chance to work with you today, Olive. So welcome, and thank you for taking this time to talk to us. But first of all, we came across a word in the research that was new to me, and maybe you can explain a little bit more. It's opsimath. Is that how to say it? Correct.
I think so. I had to learn how to say it by asking Google how to pronounce it. So,
can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be on this podcast. I'm very excited about it. So opsimath is really describing a person who either began or continued learning in later life. And this is an old word, it's a Greek word, and later life for some of the people in the early days was maybe 30 or 40, but it really refers to later life learning. And I looked up to see if there's such a thing as a opsimath club, and there was one at Simon Fraser University. Unfortunately, they changed their name, but I know there are a lot of people across this country who would be members of this club, including yourself, Sherry.
Now that's interesting. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad to add to my vocabulary. I'll keep an eye out for it.
Okay.
So all of you, looking at your background and your just even talking, just as I introduced you about all the work that you've been doing and an education and degrees that you've accomplished, what made you think about going back to school as an older adult? Was there something that just inspired you to go back to school, or how did that come about?
I think it was because I think I've always been an advocate for older people. And I think I was an advocate because I was raised by my grandparents. Mm-hmm. And I also knew 3 of my great-grandparents. And I always looked up to them. And as I grew up and then grew older, I started to see things that I didn't think were very nice, or how older people were treated. And I guess I kind of automatically became an advocate. And as an advocate, there's only so much you can do, and you have to keep learning to find out what you can do. And although I don't think I knew that at the time, I just had this, I guess, a love of learning. Not that I was a brilliant student, but
I'm sure you were.
No, not really. But I did love to learn about things, but I did my high school, which went to grade 10 at the time, and did what young women at that time did. I got married and I had children. So I had 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. And something I always wanted to do in my life was become a nurse. And we didn't have the money or really the time for me to go through to be an RN. So I looked around to see what I could possibly do. And there was a new program starting in our province called a practical nurse. And it was just a year program. And it was sponsored by the local hospital. So there was my opportunity. But the dilemma was, where was I going to find someone to look after 5 children?
Yeah, that's true, eh?
Yeah, or to pay for them. But I think if it's something you would like to do, you somehow find a way. I did find a way. I did my training and I worked in obstetrics gynecology for a couple of years. And then one of the obstetricians, gynecologists, asked if I would like to work in his office. And I jumped at the opportunity because I was doing mostly 3 to 11, which is not good when you have a family. So that was kind of my first going on. So I worked with him until he was about to retire. And at the same time, my youngest child was 14. It was a boy. And he was going to be alone during the summer. And I thought, this is not a good thing. So I said, I need to retire and be with him for the summer. The obstetrician gynecologist I was working with had given up his maternity patients, and that was my love. And so it was kind of an opportunity to say, well, I think I need to move on. So while I was off, I decided I would apply to the university to do an undergrad degree. And I thought I was going to do psychology. But I ended up going into sociology. It was really my love. And because I went back to school to learn, I also majored with the Canadian Studies program, which was new on our campus. It was a learning opportunity. So it kind of kept evolving. So after I did my undergrad, I went to, I worked with some nonprofit organizations, and then was invited to work on the Center on Health and Aging on campus. And being on campus, you kind of feel you have to be learning. So that's when I decided to do my master's. And since my interest was always in older people, I was quite interested in the lack of transportation. So my study in master's was women 70 and over who had to give up driving and what the impact was on them.
That'd be interesting.
It was quite a moving research. And throughout the time, my professors were saying, this is not a PhD. Now, you don't have to do this. So I guess that kind of intrigued me. And so it took me at least 6 years to get up the nerve to speak to someone about doing a PhD. And the director of the graduate studies for the Faculty of Education was very supportive and said she would agree that I should apply. So I did apply. And I remember someone saying, like I applied in April and I didn't find out until August whether I was accepted or not. And someone said to me, so what are you going to do if you don't get accepted? And I said, probably breathe a sigh of relief.
It's a lot of work.
I did get accepted. Well, I had no idea how much work it was going to be. But here I am. I made it through.
I mean, it's so inspiring because so many people will, think about, there are natural barriers. I mean, that you discussed, the money is a big issue for some people, time, responsibilities. But for those who are thinking about, going back to school, later life learning, I mean, it's never too late to do it. If you really want it, you'll find a way, as you said. And I think those are really good words for our listeners to think about, because there's a will, there's a way, right? And I think, I've worked with Sherry on many things. And if you're determined enough, there's a lot of support, I think, that people experience on campus as well. Can you tell us a little bit about about your research that you undertook with your PhD?
With my PhD, my study participants were women 85 and older living in rural communities. And my question was what supported or limited their ability to remain aging in place. That was really a fun research. I had 10 women, and I used photo voice as my method of data collection. I used photo voice because I wanted to make sure it was the voice of the women I was researching that people were going to hear. We had, at our first meeting, the 10 participants found out that 7 of them had been retired teachers. And they actually knew one another. So,
oh, really? Isn't that funny?
Yes. So that was really
the small PEI community, right?
Exactly. And I was not allowed. Ethics did not allow me to call older people I knew, older women I knew. I had to do some publicity, and I got some great support from CBC, Charlottetown, and so the women had to call me themselves to express an interest. I did get a few calls from daughters of women who they thought should be part of it, but that wasn't the older women's idea themselves. So the ones that remained with me were the ones that had called me themselves. And that was really neat. And when I first met them, they were 85 to 91 years of age.
Wow.
At our first meeting, one of my supervisors, I had five people on my team, and so one of them provided the resources to provide lunch for the women when we met. And I had no money to buy cameras, so the alumni bought the cameras for me.
Oh, wow.
And these were digital cameras, and they knew I was going to give them to the older people when I was finished. One of the women was 91 years old. She had never had a camera in her hand in her life.
Wow.
And so I gave her a digital camera, and talk about a quick study. She was amazing. So we met together various times for 7 to 8 months. So at our first meeting, gave them cameras, gave them opportunities to learn about them, to use them. And one of the fun things about it was this 91-year-old, I was asking them to take a picture of something in the room that's of interest and things like that. The 91-year-old had taken a picture of the only man in the room, who was one of my committee members, and she said he was the most interesting thing in the world.
That's funny. So what was your, when just knowing you and the work that you've been doing around older women, like where the findings were around, looking at the invisibility of older women, I think was one of the key outcomes that you found about having, especially in rural communities as well. And has the research that you've done in that area continued your interest in later and learning more, like in later life, continuing and doing more research and advocacy?
See, myself, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing my postdoc right now.
Wow. Amazing.
It's an ongoing process. But one of the things I'd like to mention with photo voice, the end result is supposed to be social change.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it was social change. Our provincial government developed a new program for seniors and publicly announced that it was as a result of my study and the opportunity to talk to the women themselves. And
what an impact.
How she had the opportunity to talk with the women is together we decided we were learning so much that we would have a knowledge sharing open house. And each of the women had provided 4 photographs for my study. So when we had the open house, we had borrowed some music stands from the university music department, and they were sitting there with their 4 photographs. So each one of them was there. So when people came in, they went directly to the women and talked to them. So it was really impactful. So if you wonder if the voices of the older people are heard, they are when they get a chance to hear them.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Wonderful. Well, Olive, during this time, and maybe it was just after you actually got your PhD, the CBC made a documentary featuring you called Never Too Old. And it's still available, I think, on YouTube. And it's, and I remember watching it I think I've watched it a couple of times. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about the making of that documentary.
Oh, well, it's quite interesting. I was at a conference in Manitoba, and I met a professor from Brock University, and we chatted. And she said, I have a friend in Nova Scotia I think you should meet. So this friend in Nova Scotia happened to be a videographer. And so this was my my fourth year. It took me 5 years to do my PhD. It was my fourth year. And so I get this call from the friend in Nova Scotia saying, could she come over? She'd like to talk. So her pitch was she would like to do a documentary of me doing my PhD. So I brought it up to my committee and they said, no way, you're doing nothing until you finish your PhD. Well, the videographer, Marcia, knew what she wanted, and it wasn't after the fact. She wanted the documentary during me getting my PhD. So for a year and a half, every time the phone rang, I would cringe. I'd think, oh, it's Marcy again. She's going to come over. Anyway, she came to committee meetings. I mean, my committee accepted her. She came to committee meetings. She came to my house a lot. She came to a conference in Vancouver with me. It was just amazing, and the footage was unreal. It was Marcia was the director, but she did not go through the footage. It must have been horrible because there was so much. Anyway, what resulted was the CBC Never Too Old documentary. It was amazing. It is still used. Last week it was aired again. When it gets aired with CBC, I will often get an email from an older woman, primarily an older woman. I got one from an older man who also was from BC, who is doing his PhD. The woman I got an email from the other day was also from BC, and she lives on a farm and rescues horses. I mean, wow. Amazing. I have met so many older women who are working on their masters and their PhDs. And in many cases, they said before seeing the documentary, they had kind of given up and have changed their mind and were back working again. The documentary is used by a lot of universities across the country with students. And often they are asked to watch the documentary, and then I zoom in and answer questions. And
what a great opportunity. Good intergenerational learning.
It's so much fun. I really love it. Yeah.
Well, I've similar to Sherry. I think I've watched the documentary a few times. And I was just saying before we started our interview about how I watched it again, and it almost brings tears to my eyes because it's so inspiring, the work that you've done, and as a role model for not only younger women but older women who are just contemplating going back to school, and you've overcome the challenges to say, yes, it can be done. You can do it, and you don't have to put pressure to do it. Like, it doesn't have to just happen all in this time frame that you can spread it out, whatever meets your needs. And I think you mentioned the documentary about procrastinating. I think we're all doing that, although my house isn't clean though when I procrastinate. But I think that
cleaning or baking usually.
Exactly. And, I love that phrase, that you had said that we often hear, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks, which was referred to in the documentary, because, that kind of feeds into that ageism idea and which you've totally dispelled in the work that you do. So it's, I think it's just quite inspiring.
I think what was interesting is I've always had an interest in ageism, and that's what I was going to do my PhD on. And I just realized it's such a complex, large topic. But as it ended up, it really did deal with ageism.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will get to sit with classes on my own campus with the young people as they're watching and answer questions after. And I remember one young man saying, I noticed by the documentary you had a lot of help from your family. And I said, I certainly did, and I don't know what I would have done without it. And he was from another country, and he said, I have nobody. What can I do?
Mm.
And I thought, oh, we've got the senior center right beside campus. Why can't you find a grandmother or grandfather to work with? It was so sad to hear him say that.
Yeah.
There's lots of room for, right now we're forming we have a network, an intergenerational network happening. We had a meeting last night, and we have a variety of ages in some of the students. It's so much fun to work with them all.
Yeah, I think that the lifelong learning and intergenerational learning, I think, is getting full steam again. I think people are starting to talk about it more and now actually do implement these programs. Even the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, often referred to as UNESCO, they're really pushing more towards later life learning and aging societies, and hoping to encourage more of the youth, I think, in the future to, and not the youth, but also the seniors to engage in these.
Yeah.
Is the real value that you see, what is the real value of later life learning to an aging society? Because we have a population that's aging, right? And so people are retiring earlier, and as we know, and who are fortunate to do so. And so what is the value for those people who are listeners who might be retired or are contemplating maybe going back? What is the value for them to go back to do this?
Well, I think personal growth is probably the most important.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a complicated world. We need to learn as much as we can to address the challenges that we might face as we grow older. One of the challenges we have is, of course, technology. But like our people before us, they also dealt with technology, but in a different way.
Yeah.
But it was all technology. So they overcame it. So can we, but we do have to learn how to use it and know and make technology work for us, not us work for technology.
That's true.
It's a great learning experience. I'm having lots and lots of opportunities to learn, and just things like switching from a Zoom meeting to a team meeting. And sometimes your computer will refuse. This morning I had a meeting with somebody from the Netherlands. Yesterday I had a meeting 8:00 in the morning with one person was in Australia, one was in the Netherlands, one was in Florida, and I was here in PEI. So, it's
a lot of connections.
There's a lot of connections.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that a PhD does. It opens so many doors and just provides so many learning opportunities. I'm having the time of my life.
There's another issue that's been arising with ageism around employment. And people who want to or need to continue to be employed and earn money after they're supposed to retire at 65 or earlier. And often that requires, or to be able to maximize the benefits of that, you need to go back to school.
Yes.
And so there's that lifelong learning that has a very practical component to it, other than just, well, I shouldn't say just, because when you are a lifelong learner, that's part of who you are. But even more so, when you have especially a financial need in this day and age, or you've become single, or there's all kinds of reasons why that would happen, then you need to be able to use what you've learned over the years and so on to the very best benefit that you can, and that takes learning and training. I mean, I think that there's a lot more of that going on now than ever was before. There used to be, people would say, well, when I retire, I'm going to be a Walmart greeter, and that's not really a goal for many older adults when they need to go back to work.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of ages too when you say you're going to be a Walmart greeter.
Right.
But I think learning is more than having employment. And I think if we don't recognize the personal development, we are forgetting that older people bring with them a lot of knowledge just from living life. Mm-hmm. And we have to start recognizing that as extremely important for our society. So we talk about productive aging. Well, productive aging has been kind of taken on by the powers that be as being able to go back to work and be productive for the economy.
And to be fulfilled as an individual as well.
Yes, but it's pushing older people to be economically productive, meaning making money for some company, not what they really want to do. So I think, there's the two-way street. I mean, I still work. I'm working on campus, and I'm doing my postdoc, but I'm working on campus. At the moment, I'm not doing the research of my love. I'm researching military people who are transitioning from military life to civilian life. And so this is a whole new area for me. So I'm learning a lot about what it's like to transition to a whole different life. So,
right.
Yeah. When we're just getting more on that topic around ageism, do you feel that ageism, and we might have touched on this a bit in our conversation, but do you feel like ageism impacts lifelong learning or prevents people from going back to school, that they may not be treated the same as other students, or that?
Ageism does impact. The internalized ageism is so negative for older people. They don't believe in their own abilities. They, even I, who should know better, when I actually got accepted into the PhD program, number one, our campus is very small, so 4 people were accepted. So I automatically thought, there must have been only 4 people applied. And then I found out 9 people applied. And then I started feeling guilty that I was taking the place of a younger person.
Oh.
So you're even though you know better, ageism is so normalized that you are ageist anyway, whether you should be or not. But it's, I had a very, very supportive committee. There was 3 women and a man. I didn't know until after, they were spoken to by their colleagues, asking them why they were wasting their time supervising an older person.
Really?
Oh, goodness.
Never once did I feel ageism. In fact, maybe in reverse, I remember walking across campus with a young woman. We were going to the library, and she said, "You must think we're really dumb." And I said, "No, it's the total opposite. I think you guys are so smart." And it's just, it's a perception we have, and I still think the young people today have so much more knowledge than I had when I was their age. So I admire what they're doing. And I think that's why I really like working with them so much that it's.
Yeah. There's another sort of question that we can investigate a little bit. So how does lifelong learning or continuing education of some kind help in the fight against elder abuse?
Well, I think the more you learn, the more you know, the more questions you can ask. If you don't know enough about something, you don't know the right questions to ask. We're dealing with that in our own province, where this new network we're developing. We're developing to look at ageism and abuse of older people. We are all learning. We have tools now that have been developed by the National Elder Abuse Group, and Rayanne, you're very much involved in that too. We're very grateful for those tools that we can use, and we have a variety of people on our team, and some of the students are going out to the senior center, to their fellow students on campus and in the seniors college or the
Elder college.
Yeah. And so they're really excited about it. They're learning a lot. Last night, we had a meeting, and the RCMP are involved as well. So they're excited about being involved with the students and doing presentations. So it's that learning what it really is, and learning that there are tools you can use and how to use the tools. And then
the awareness building. And one's, I think, maybe close we need to can be aware of the time a bit. But if a listener is considering going back to school at an older age, what do they need to consider, and would you encourage them to do some of these things that you're talking about?
I would definitely encourage them to go back. I think we all learn every day, and it depends on your interest as to what you're going to learn about. As long as you're learning, I think you're living.
So is there a cost involved to it?
Oh, yes, there is a cost involved. So there are various ways that people may learn if they're going to formal learning. They can audit courses. The seniors college has lots of courses that are taught by seniors themselves. And in our seniors college, many of the facilitators are retired faculty, and they're as excited about teaching older people as they were about teaching younger people. So, and then, or it's people who have a special interest, and they want to share it with others. So learning is such a two-way street. And
I mean, I find that the having Zoom or Teams available and webinars and so on is huge. I mean, I'm always signing up for webinars so I can continue with my learning on a certain topic. And I think that we didn't, when we were younger, we never had that opportunity. So I think that that's something that we can embrace.
Oh, very definitely. But also, I think what is extremely important is that we have opportunities to get together face to face.
Yeah.
It's the best. And even if you're going to watch a webinar, invite a friend in. It really does enhance your learning opportunities.
Well,
That is building on what Sherry said. I mean, there's so many different opportunities now, and lifelong learning takes on, like you just said, so many different forms, Sherry, and all of like, there's webinars that our organization at Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario, we host webinars on a regular basis to educate older adults about so many different topics. And it's not just, abuse prevention, but we try to expand the topics around, aging vibrantly and protection of your safety and well-being. Because, there could be workshops in your local senior center that you might want to go to, or wellness fairs. So there's so many opportunities that doesn't have to be just school, but school is one option for people.
It's just one option, yes.
Yeah. And I think it's, so I thank you so much for sharing your insights. And, when you're thinking about going back to school, that your thought about internalized ageism is really important, because, I learned more about that. We just did an education session. I'm always learning when we do some of our own education, and how we perceive our own abilities, and we underestimate our abilities, I think, about what we can do or what we can achieve. So we need to dispel those and try, and if maybe that's not the right fit, maybe there's something else that might intrigue people to get engaged.
I think maybe the most important thing is something that's of interest to you, and something that you want to learn more about. And no matter what it is, there's a ton of information out there. Like we have in our province, we have community school during the winter, and it's learning how to play a musical instrument. It's learning how to cook a new recipe. It's learning how to make something, and people love it, and all ages go to it. So
that's amazing.
I have a contemporary. I'm 85, and we went to university together, and she's been learning the ukulele for the last couple of years. And so when we do little Zoom meetings with our classmates periodically, which I host, and we have to time it around her ukulele lessons.
Well, this is a great note to finalize how we wrap up our webinars. Is we always ask our guests the same question, and that is, what advice would you give to empower someone to age vibrantly?
Well, I guess my thinking is we can't empower anyone, but we can provide the tools to enable them to empower themselves. And I think get out there, be with other people. It's the most amazing thing in the world, just sitting around and having a wonderful chat about whether it's politics and everybody gets mad at one or it's discussing something that we really love to learn and know about. So it's really be out there in your community. Don't let yourself be behind closed doors. It's a learning world, and I think we all benefit from it.
Well, thank you so much, Olive, for joining us today. And as I say, you're inspiring to myself, and I know so many other people. And we will encourage everyone to go and watch the documentary. We'll have the link in our show notes for people to go and find that. It's on the CBC Gem documentaries. Sherry, thank you for co-hosting this session with us again. It's always a pleasure to have you on board for these episodes to empower older adults and to listen and learn in our education sessions that we're trying to do in the podcast series that we're hosting. So thank you both again, and we hope that we'll be able to have the opportunity to do this again, and maybe we'll meet in person sometime soon so we can reconnect and learn more as well. So thank you. As we wrap up our discussion, I want our listeners to think about and remember the inspirational messages Olive imparted with us today. One that is so important to remember is that you are never too old. Don't let ageism dictate what you can or want to pursue in life. Stay true to yourself and reach out to others to stay connected and never stop learning. To find links to Olive's documentary and other resources on lifelong learning, please view our show notes and check out our website at EAPON for information on abuse prevention and protecting the rights and dignity of older adults. Be sure to check other episodes of our podcast on our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to your podcast. Don't forget, if you like our Aging Vibrantly podcast, the best way to show your support and to help us grow is to subscribe, to like, share, and leave us a review. This podcast is funded by the Government of Canada's New Horizons for Seniors program and produced and edited by Todd Miller of Podcast Experts with the support of Lisa Woodfield, our project coordinator. Until next time, stay vibrant.